my name is Tuppence. So this week I'm going to be making a sun catcher. I have got some cookie cutters, although these are actually for making flowers out of sugarcraft. This is the petal mould to shape the petals, and you use the cutters to actually cut out the clay or fondant that you're going to be putting in there. I've also got this 3mm flat bezel wire, and I'm going to use these cutters to shape my bezel. I want to create 2 teardrops. I'm just going to slightly overlap that at the top and use my fingers to bend this wire all the way round until I come back up to the top and meet it. Just want to make sure that it's nice and snug and is hugging that shape. And then I'm going to take a pair of wire snips and I'm going to snip that where it meets at the top of the peak. The little piece of wire that's overlapping, that will become the hook to hang it by, or a loop I'm going to make. So I've got a pair of round nose pliers and I'm just rolling that wire around the pliers and shaping it into a ring, and that is going to be at the peak of the teardrop, right at the very top and the point. Now this is a little bit springy and it doesn't really want to hold its shape at the moment, but it will once I put it on the bezel tape that I'm going to use. Right, now I need to do the smaller one, and this one does not need a loop, but it's the same process. So I'm just going to take some of the wire. I am going to slightly overlap that first and wrap that around. Make sure I come up the other side as well. You do need to try and keep this wire flat because it does have a tendency to twist, and you do want it to remain flat and upright. So I'll snip that off again at the top. Just try and shape that a little better. Make sure that point is nice and crisp. And then I'm going to snip off that excess because I don't need to make a loop for this one. So I'll just take the pliers and snip where it meets at the very top. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I have my 2 shapes. I'm going to need to stick these onto some kind of bezel tape or sticky tape so that I can fill this with UV resin. I'm going to use this old Cricut mat to help me. It's a little bit damaged, but it's still pretty sticky. And I'm going to lay down my contact paper, which I'm going to be using as bezel tape, onto the mat. So I'm putting the plastic side down. I've got the paper tape facing me, and I'm going to smooth that down, and because it's sticky, that will hold that in place. Then I can just peel back the tape and expose the sticky side. Just want to make sure that it stays pretty flat. I don't want too many wrinkles or bubbles, although I don't really mind too much because this is going to wrinkle a little bit once I put the UV resin in here and start curing it. That contracts a little bit and it does wrinkle the paper. But I'm happy with that. I don't mind because I think it gives the UV resin a look of sort of hand-blown glass, which is kind of what I'm going for. So now I'm going to stick down my big teardrops shape. Just try and make sure that that is meeting at the top. Now it's not going to stay there. It will keep springing off. So I'm going to use a little bit of this UV bonding resin. I'm going to put a tiny bit just on the outside of the bezel where it meets that ring. And then I'm going to cure that in place, and hopefully this will be enough to hold that so that when I put the UV resin on the inside, that will completely seal it, and I shouldn't have any leaks. So about 5 to 10 seconds, that'll be enough. I'm just going to add a little bit more on the top, just a fractional amount. Now I am putting clear resin in here, or I will be inside this ring, so you're not going to notice this anyway. But I'm not putting a huge blob there. So I'm just using the torch that comes with that UV bonding resin in the kit. And there we go. That is now secure, and I can add this one into the middle. So I'm just going to put that in place, and again I will use a little bit of that bonding resin just to make sure that that stays closed as well. Otherwise, when I start to pour resin in the space in between, it will leak in. So I'm putting that on the inside or the outside of that teardrop, on the inside of the space that I want to fill, so that you're not going to notice it. And again, cure that with the torch. Hopefully, as long as these stay attached to that sticky back plastic, I should be able to fill this without any leaks. Right, before I fill this, I just want to make sure everything is pressed down, and then I'm going to put a thin layer of craft UV resin in the bottom. This is going to make sure that everything is nice and sealed, and it will give me a platform to work on. So when I put this underneath the lamp now, I'm just going to be curing it from the top. But as soon as this layer is cured and sealed, then I can take this plastic off of that craft mat, put it in my dual lamp so that it'll be able to cure from the top and the bottom for any further layers. So I've just put that thin layer in there. And now I'm going to use my silicone tool, make sure that I spread that across the surface, try and get rid of any bubbles. I don't actually mind too many bubbles. Again, I think that gives it a hand-blown glass look. But I do want to make sure that it is meeting all of the edges of the frame on the inside and the outside. Otherwise, it won't join these two pieces together. So I'm going to spread that across the surface. I do have a couple of bubbles there, which I'm just going to round up. See if I can get them to pop. And then I'll pop this underneath my UV lamp. I'm going to cure this for 5 minutes just to make sure, because it's only going to be curing from one side. Alright, that is looking pretty good, so I'm going to put this under the lamp and cure this layer. That's all cured and I'm ready for the second layer now. I've got a little bit of UV resin in my silicone cup. I'm going to add these chips of Mylar. They're little flakes of opalescent Mylar. I don't want too much, I want most of it to remain clear, and just the odd flake here and there. I don't know if you can notice just under my hand, if I move that out of the way, yeah, you can see that that backing has already wrinkled, and that first layer does look like hand-blown grass, which is an effect that is especially good for sun catchers, so I really like that. So I'm just going to mix those flakes in, and I'm going to do it gently so that I don't introduce too many bubbles, and then I can start to fill this second layer. Now that I've got 2 layers of resin, it should be thick enough that I can remove the tape. So I'm gently going to peel that from the back. I'm trying to be careful because you can still separate the resin from the wire. So I'm gently pulling it, and it's come off pretty well. It hasn't left any kind of residue on the back. But I do have a couple of areas where it leaked out from the inner ring, and I've got just a little bit of overspill. I'm going to take that off with a craft knife, and if that doesn't come off with that, I'll just file it off gently with an electric file. That looks better. I've got my base. Now I need to work on the decoration that I want to put on it. I'm going to keep my green mat so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm putting my acrylic plate from my curing machine down on top, and then I'm putting that plastic that I usually cover that mat with, because I know the resin will come off of that. It will not come off my plate, and I'm going to do a little bit of freeform work. So I've mixed up this mica powder with my UV resin. It's a kind of interference blue. I think it looks like a periwinkle colour. So I'm going to start to make a blob on my plastic sheet, and then I'm just going to pull that into a petal shape. So I'm making a series of teardrop shapes. Now to stop that moving, I'm going to quickly cure that in place with my torch, just enough to set it so that it doesn't want to draw back into a blob. And I'm going to carry on making these shapes, and these are going to be the petals of my flowers. I want this to look a little bit like a fused glass sun catcher. So I'm going to pop the music back on and make these petals. Next, I want to make some white. I'm using Meyspring Dazzling diamonds, which is a white mica with some glitter in it. And this is going to be for some snowdrops. So I'm going to put a couple of scoops in, more than a couple, and then mix that round. So you don't want to make it so opaque that you can't get the UV light through. That's why I'm not putting too much in. This is going to be a pretty thin layer, so it should cure fine. And in the same way that I did the other petals, I'm going to freehand this. I'm still working on that plastic sheet, and I'm laying down a blob and just elongating the petals a little more and perhaps curving them slightly differently. So again, I'm going to pop on some music and I'll fast forward this. I've got all my petals now and I just need to assemble this. I'm going to put a light coat of UV resin on top, and then I can fix everything in place and just cure it from the top and the bottom. So again, I'm going to pop on some music and fast forward this as I arrange all of these petal pieces. Okay, I'm going to put it in the dual UV lamp for 5 minutes. I've mixed a little bit of this green acrylic nail powder with some UV resin on the back of a mould, and I'm going to use that to paint a blob on the top of the snowdrops so that the petals look like they're all joined together. I'm curing it as I go with my torch. And then I've mixed up a little yellow acrylic powder and I'm adding dots to the centres of the purple flowers. Everything is going to go under the lamp now for a final cure. I've got a small piece of floristry wire which I've bent into a hook. I'm picking up some of the green resin that I used for the cap of the snowdrops. Then I'm going to hold that against the top of the snowdrop and set that in place using the torch. I'll add a couple more drops just to make sure that it is attached. Then I'm going to add some clear resin all along the stem to fix it in place. Once that's cured, I'll cut off any excess that is hanging over the edge of the frame. I want a final pop of colour and I'm going to add some of these flat-backed red gems, and I'm going to apply them using some UV bonding resin. All that's left to do is to use a jump ring to attach a chain. So I'm just going to put that through the loop that I made and then add the chain in place. Do back up the jump ring, and that is pretty much it. So this looks a lot like fused glass, which is an effect that I really love, and I think it's super pretty. I can't wait for spring, so until it gets here, this is going to be a nice addition to my window. I hope you've liked this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.